What's going on, guys? Today I want to go over a few things that you can apply to any programming languages so you can get your studying off right, so you can understand the basics of programming language, whatever programming language you're using, and move forward from there. A lot of the times, there's so many basic things that just revolve around all the programs that you can learn one program and understand many more. So I'm gonna teach you guys a method to quickly learn programming languages the way I did. Um, and just basically get an understanding how you need to go about studying your programming language. So first off, we're going to talk about the syntax. Syntax of the programming language is every programming has a syntax. For example, in C, this has this is C right here. It has a main statement, and everything that's in the main gets executed. So you need to understand the syntax that if you have a function here and you have another function here, it's not going to get executed unless you implement it in the main curly braces. And you need to understand the syntax in order to understand the programming language. Um, you could have a basic idea of what you're learning um, by understanding the syntax and how it works. Uh, Now, if we go next, what? So, next up is the keywords that the programming has. In this case, most of them will be listed out. You need to get a list of those and understand what every single keyword means and make sure not to use it in your programming language or try to assign a variable with this name. A lot of these keywords are pre-programmed into the compiler to understand certain things. Just Boolean, break, do statements, while statements, declaring a double variable, as if else statements, and there's many more. Understand the keywords because you will need them and they will make your life easy. They're meant to shorten your code and help you with organizing your code. So make sure you understand what the keywords are of the program. We got operators, understanding how operators work, which are fairly simple. When most of the time in programming, you never use just a single equal sign to compare something. A single equal sign means an assignment, and we don't want that when we want to compare something. So make sure you understand the operators and how you can use them for your statements. Understanding if else statements is very important. It's very fairly simple for you to understand that if is true condition, this is the code. Otherwise, go read this code. And you'll use if statements a lot, so make sure you understand how the loop goes and how it works. There's also cases, which is the expression, and whatever case it matches to, that's the code that is going to run. And you could choose to break the code, or if it doesn't match any of the cases, you could go run a default code. And this will be applied to any programming language. A while statement, which is just a simple while this is true, run this code. If it's still true, run this code. Make sure you understand how to manipulate the while loop statement so you don't end up in an endless loop. A do while statement is also important. It makes sure that the code runs at least one time through the loop, and then it checks the condition, and if it's still true, it keeps looping through that code over there until the while statement is false. You need to understand an arrays. Arrays are pretty much a table with variables in them. So they always start out with 0, Programming starts at zero. Number one is always zero in programming. You need to understand that. You need to understand how arrays and double arrays work and how to access them and how the index system works, how the numbering system work, and how 3D arrays, because they could be in multiple brackets here. This is simple syntax for C. Understand that that making sure you have comments all over your code is the most important thing. You'd be surprised how quickly you can forget all your code just by leaving it for a couple of days and coming back and having no idea what you did. When it's fresh, it makes sense to you, but when you return back a couple of days or a couple of weeks, it could be a nightmare trying to figure out where your code is. Before you start a project, make sure you understand what you need for your project. For example, this is an online banking diagram. You can see the settings, what each settings, what it needs to have, the user profile, one-time password change, security, PIN, security tools for the dashboard. What do you need? What kind of functions you need for them? How do you manage them? For the payment system, what can you do? It all this steps need to be figured out before you start programming. Otherwise, you're going to be in a mess trying to figure out how you can code this. You can say everything has a specific function in there, restriction function, date function, IP, account, limited settings. You need to have all these details because you could create functions for them and you'll use them later in the future. But if you don't have this planned out, you will have a difficult time trying to stick to your guns and edit out a program, and your code is going to be all over the place. But in this case, you could program a specific class just for that, a specific security tool function, a class just for security tools, which accesses only when it needs security tools and is only access to private, not public. It's important that you plan this. Otherwise, you're going to be left over with a bunch of code that's all over the place. You don't need to know a programming language to write one of these layouts out. If I'm looking here, online banking, right? It's gonna have settings and it's going to be a user profile. Okay, a user profile needs to have its own tab, needs to have its own information, it needs to have its own functions. It needs to bring up the user's name, user's last name, user's password, user's email, user's description, user level of security. So all of those require different functions and different variables. They're important that you need to know what kind of variables to use, which ones to make public, which ones to make private. And you need to draw every single line out of code on a paper before you start coding. Otherwise, your code looks like junk. Make sure you guys apply these methods to any programming you learn. It's very easy to understand a programming language once you understand the syntax, the type of variables, the keywords, the basics of it. It comes easy to you. It's very simple. You know, there's libraries that you can help you learn the programming languages, and it's very simple. That's how I learned a bunch of programming languages. It's not that hard once you understand the basics. They all kind of correlate into each other. Each programming language has a specific character, and mind I say that before you go and you destroy me on the internet. But you gotta understand that they're all fairly simple, and if you learn those tasks, you will be able to code freely in multiple programming languages. Peace out.